Welcome to another Refrigeration Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Matthews, and I want to thank you so much once again, like every week, for taking the time to listen to this podcast. This is why I do it, is because listeners like you taking your time to come and listen and hang out with some of the experts and the top techs in the field. This week, a really good friend of mine met a few years ago, Bill Russell. Curious HVAC, and I'd love to get into that title as well as he's 50% of the HVAC overtime crew. Why do I say 50%? We're going to dive into that. Bill, welcome to the Refrigeration Mentor podcast. How you doing?
What's up, everybody? What's up, Trevor? Thank you so much for having me here. This is it's always a blast to talk to you, but let alone to be invited on this podcast. That one day it will be an historical event, I'm sure.
Of course it is. I met you a few years ago, you and the HVAC overtime crew, and you guys been super consistent over the last couple years on every Friday night doing your thing. And I want to say congrats on that. That is huge. Consistency is huge in this industry.
Yeah, we've been crushing it. We missed a handful of episodes, but honestly, in the trade that we're all in, it's kind of hard not to. Everybody's on call sometimes. The emergencies roll in, the wife and kids. But yeah, it has been a wild ride, actually. And sort of off topic, just as we were approaching our 200th episode, I actually had the HVAC Overtime logo tattooed on my arm, just to make it that much more real, I suppose.
Oh, that's awesome. Congrats, man. That's amazing. And I pop in all the time. I sit in the shadows most of the time and I just
Oh no,
listen
we
in.
see you. We see you. Yeah, you're a frequent chat member.
But I enjoy some of the conversations, and it's nice to come in, relax, and you guys are chatting about some great topics. You have some great guests too, and you guys are there to have fun, which is good. You need some of that downtime from the hectic schedules you guys all have.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. We've always had the mindset. In each episode, we kind of go into it with the idea or the mindset that this is just a couple of guys hanging out after hours at a supply house, maybe having some beers, just talking shop. Maybe we're not talking shop. Maybe we're complaining about our significant other. Maybe we're talking about the latest and greatest in the industry. And above all else, we also want to let people know, like, hey, you can come into this industry, you can be a super nerd, you can still have fun, you can get paid good money, and also do something that you really, really enjoy.
Yeah, and I totally love that. So, Bill, let's get into it. Let's find out. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you, how you got into the industry and where you're at now, because I know over the last few years we've talked a lot about personal development, and I know you are crushing some of this stuff that a lot of other technicians I hope gets on this train that you're on, because this is where change happens. And I'd love to get some of your feedback of how this continually evolves for you, because you are someone who, once again, I said already, consistent, but you are someone who is very invested in personal development.
Yeah, that's true. And a quick takeaway on like the personal growth aspect of things, the personal investments that I try to make. I look at it as I wasn't given a manual for this life. There's no book that, like, hey, when you turn 18, here's a book on how to be a good husband. Here's a book how to be a good dad. There's no manuals for this sort of thing. So as I live and breathe, I'm constantly swinging this self-judging pendulum back around, and I'm looking at my life. I'm like, not necessarily where did I go wrong, but where could I go righter? Where could I be better? What things could I improve on? And that's all just I also tie that into being curious. I'm curious of how I could get better. And then once I figure out these little weakness or weak areas of my life or things that I want to change in general, then that's the action time. Then it's time to get on the Google. How do people change? It's time to start reading some books, maybe some Tony Robbins, maybe some visualization books, life coaches, all those sort of things. But real quick, how I got into the trade, it's kind of a funny story. I sort of fell backwards into the trade without even really knowing it. I grew up, I guess my first job was delivering appliances, and I grew up with this romantic idea of becoming a home appliance repair technician. And I always pictured the Maytag man. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever told this story to anybody else on any other platform at any other time in history. So buckle up. So I had this romantic idea of one day becoming the Maytag man in a sense. And a buddy of mine, his grandpa owned a appliance store, and high school, I worked there delivering appliances, and they had this giant stack of appliance repair manuals in the bathroom. And they also had some, not to mention, books in there as well, but I didn't really look at those because I wasn't interested in those. And I would take these manuals, I would take them home and I'd read them. And I tell you what, in a couple of years, I got pretty good at fixing appliances. And they started sending me out on a call here or there. And eventually, years down the road, after studying and working up to it, I became the head honcho, the senior technician, if you will, for this small company. And then I sort of got on this self exploration path. I got real deep into art and music, and I moved into the big city, and I wanted to be a rock star. So life kind of shifted for me just a little bit. And once I figured out like I could play guitar and mimic others, but once I really figured out I had no natural rhythm, my music career wasn't really taking off. I was like, well, it's time for a change, and I didn't really know what to do. So I ended up in a Wendy's restaurant flipping burgers to pay the bills. I was like, all right, well, I'm here now. I might as well make the best of it. I worked my way up a couple of years as a general manager of the Wendy's restaurant. That a whole nother subject, but just going through that learning process, there was so much growth that I experienced in there, just learning things the hard way, how to have conversations, like leadership sorts of things. But there was an insane amount of frustration that goes along with dealing with people at that level, and I wanted out of it. I didn't want to be in that position anymore. I wasn't happy, it wasn't fulfilling, and so I left that and I went back to my appliance repair roots and started a business. I owned a Mr. Appliance franchise for a number of years, and that sort of fizzled out. Actually, about 2 years, that sort of fizzled out, and I got a phone call right about. I don't think the ink was dry on the bankruptcy papers because I closed out my business. Everything kind of went downhill for my appliance repair business. Ink wasn't even dry, and I got a phone call from an old associate at Wendy's saying they needed a maintenance repair guy, and somebody had mentioned my name. I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. I don't know anything about HVAC, but I know my way around appliances, so let's see where this goes. And I worked there for 5 years, and I'll be honest with you, Trevor, it was the best. I call it schooling, but it was the best schooling I could have ever asked for in this trade. I mean, I got a lot of hot side experience, walk-in coolers, medium-sized reefer units, the whole HVAC rooftop units, and it was all sort of the hard way. They gave me an old guy and a van full of parts. They're like, use this, go fix stuff. The old guy was cranky all the time, but he showed me the ropes. And he said, listen, when you're not busy, sit up on the roof, read these manuals. If you got nothing going on that day, take a unit apart. Just take it apart, see what it's made of, see what makes it tick. And for 5 years, honestly, that's what I did. I sat up on rooftops reading manuals. I watched YouTube videos up on rooftops. I would just take stuff apart because it was a slow day. And well, I mean, I never seen the insides of a train before. So today's the day. Take it all apart and put it back together. See if it works. Sometimes it would, sometimes it wouldn't. And so that's sort of where the basis of my love for the industry, or my first step, came. And yeah, sort of from there, I just shifted over to a mechanical contractor. I was there for about 5 years, and then kind of bounced around. But I've been in the same industry now for going on 15 years, which is wild to say out loud.
No, but that's a huge journey there, and there's stories within those stories. But that is great because what just from what I'm hearing, you were never satisfied. You wanted to keep moving, even when you went in and you started flipping burgers, and then you worked your way up to management. Then you're like, okay, what's next? You ran your own business, and then things happen. Shut the doors, that happens. But you know what? You didn't give up, and that's the best thing about someone like you who is just keeping going after it. And now 15 years in this industry. And I'm sure you've learned so much in the last 15 years from that first 5 years, not knowing anything, learning, practicing, reading, which is great. And this is what more technicians need to do is read those manuals. We consistently, all of us say it all the time is you got to read the manuals. And that's just a starting point, because when you read the manuals, then you take it apart and then you figure out more things and then you learn things from that. That is awesome. So you went from that training ground into a mechanical contractor. And what was that shift like? Because I've done maintenance before, industrial maintenance and stuff, and it could be slow. There's days when it's slow. And then moving back to a service contractor, it was like for me, supermarket, it was just go, go, go. How was that shift for you?
Well, for me, I feel like I got really, really lucky because the shift for me was it was just the smoothest changeover you could ever ask for. My time spent with Wendy's was I did do the odd and end things like replace some ceiling tiles, maybe do a little painting, but a majority of the work I did was on the mechanical systems, the mechanical side of things. I'd built up a good resume, a good bit of an experience, I thought. And when this other mechanical contractor came to town looking for new technicians, I was like, all right, well, let's give this a shot. And this mechanical contractor just so happened to basically do everything that I had already been doing. They did hot side, they did fryers, they did everything in a restaurant essentially. So I plopped down my resume and said, well, I already do everything in a restaurant. I've been doing everything in restaurants for 5 years. And they said, well, you're just what we're looking for. And I was like, all right, where do I sign? And I came aboard and literally was jumped in my van, and obviously there's the learning curve of the paperwork, the systems, and the various other things. But it was a very, very comfortable changeover for me. The only thing that I was sort of a little bit apprehensive about was I came into the company and I was introduced into a leadership role rather fast. And throughout my tenure at Wendy's and the little bit of time I had at this new company, there wasn't a whole lot of leadership training. So that became my new thing to be curious about. That became the new thing that I'm like, well, where do you find a manual on leadership? Like, well, it's time to get curious, and no pun intended. But so then I would just go home and I would Google these things and I'd read articles and I jump into some Tony Robbins books, and I didn't necessarily blow it out of the water, but I did a pretty good job, I think, going into it. But that was an interesting time.
So when did Curious HVAC guy come into play? Because I know being curious is one of the number one things more people need to be asking why, want to understand deeper level. And that's what I love about you, Bill. You always want to know at a deeper level how things work and why they work that way. And not only in the professional career, but also in the personal life. When did that come into play and that persona?
I haven't thought about this in a long, long time. When I shifted over to that first mechanical contractor out outside of my training grounds, outside of Wendy's, it was probably, gosh, I don't know, maybe a year into that company. And one day, the vice president of the company, who was a really good friend of mine, just an amazing guy. He said, like, I want all the technicians, everybody out there, I want you guys just to make a video about your experience, like how you like the company. And I think he was trying to put together something for like an advertisement of some sort. I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. I've been watching YouTube for years, and like it can't be that difficult. So I put it in selfie mode, got my phone out. I made a video myself talking about this company, and I had a rooftop unit in the back, so I highlighted some things I was doing with that. The vice president was like, well, that's pretty good. And also, you're the only one that did it in the entire company. I'm like, oh, well, that's thank you for that. And also, that's kind of scary that nobody else even attempted. And that day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this whole thing a shot. And I turned the camera around. I think the very next day, I turned the camera on my next job, started filming it, and I was just talking out loud. And up until that point, one of my major influences was Chris Stevens, HVACR videos, and Zach Ciota. He was also another OG that I watched quite a bit of. And so I made a couple of videos. I sent my videos to Zach and Chris both, and I was just getting feedback from them. And they really initially, like early on, they really gave me some very helpful feedback. I was like, this is fun. I enjoyed the feedback I was getting from people. I enjoyed the feeling of making some sort of a difference, even if I was just scratching the surface on the training grounds, just to know that, hey, you out there, video watching person, like this is how this goes. This is something I didn't know 5 years ago. You might be where I was 5 years ago. Here you go. Here's a tip. Your life just got a little bit easier. And then, of course, I grew the beard in and made a logo. I'm like, wow, I'm curious. So, how about I don't know, curious HVAC guy?
That's awesome. What's cool about it is that you started and you didn't stop. When it comes back to consistency. That first time being behind that camera is like it's tough, it's hard. I've done it. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're just a natural in front of the camera." No, I spent thousands and thousands, probably of hours now in front of the camera. And but before that, it was just putting the camera up and just talking to a camera every day for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, not even know what to talk about half the time, but just trying to get myself comfortable because I knew I wanted to share knowledge as well. And the best way to do it was to record myself.
Like there's a time I feel in a young YouTuber's life where they flip that camera around and they're either videoing themselves or they're videoing something that they're doing. And there's this awkward sort of phase you have to get through of like you're just talking to a phone. And yeah, like sometimes there's people around me and they're just staring at me like, oh, that guy's just talking to his phone. Or there's other technicians and I'm just talking to my phone like as it's a person. And I remember that was hilarious at times and also awkward at times.
And I know that feeling for sure. One thing that I've done for years and years now, even before a lot of recording yourself, when video chatting came out, like from Messenger or on FaceTime, I started doing it with all my family and friends. Half the time they wouldn't answer, like, I don't talk on video. What are I? But I feel that bring me closer to my family because they lived all over the country. Most of the people that I call today is video chat. I don't call very often on the phone, just talking audio. So over the time, it got easier and easier. What do you feel? What was the top thing that you got out of starting to make these videos? Is it actually that training and sharing to help someone else grow? Is it a personal satisfaction of you learning something to share with someone else? What are some of the key things that
It,
you really get out of it?
it was a mixture of personal satisfaction and the feeling of I'm helping the next person. I initially started making these because, well, I mean, the various other reasons that I stated, but when I started making them, I had to decide who I was making them for. I wasn't making them necessarily for myself, although I did enjoy the feedback that I was getting, but I started to shift the way I thought about these as I'm in this sort of leadership role. I have guys that are, newer sort of apprentice level technicians coming in, and there was no good way for me to show them certain things that I needed to show them. And so I started making these videos, and it was not always 100% successful. But the times where it was successful, the times where an apprentice would call me like, "Hey, Bill, I'm on this fryer, or I'm on this rooftop unit, or I'm on this walk-in cooler. Can you help me out with it?" I'm like, you know what? I made a video with that same exact problem or a very similar problem. Go ahead and watch this. Give me a call. We'll talk about it. And that initially was my reasoning why. And then as those apprentices got better and better, my mindset sort of shifted to now I'm teaching other people that I don't know, people that I don't necessarily work with, but on a similar level.
So that was your first connection with Chris Stevens, HVACR videos. How did that relationship come to become HVAC OT or overtime guys? Like, is that from years of connecting with him? Because that's probably a story in itself.
I'll be honest, when we asked Chris to be a part of the show, I was 100% sure he was going to say no. I mean, he's got 9 things going at any different time of the day. It started way, way back in the day when Zach Ciota was still a part of the show. I forget who it was, but there was somebody who sort of dropped out of the show, and then it was just Adam, Zach, and Joe the Canadian. They were kind of like, messing around with some things, trying to figure out some chemistry. And I was in the chat consistently every Friday. And my only purpose to get in the chat was to try to disrupt the show in a fun way. I was trying to get the guys. I was just saying these outlandish comments just to, I'd make fun of Joe just to throw him off subject, just because I got a sick joy out of it. And then, behind the scenes, I did communicate with them through Facebook, and me and Zach were talking about my videos, and they said, "Hey, you want to come on an episode or two?" I'm like, all right. So I came on there, and we had some pretty good chemistry. And they eventually, Zach said, "Hey, you want to be a part of the show?" I'm like, "Thought you never asked, bro." And I became a part of the show. And then we sort of separated from Zach a little while later, and we're like, we kind of need a fourth person. We're like, we need to balance this thing out. And we had been tossing around some ideas, and Adam was like, let's ask Chris, HVACR videos. I'm like, he's never going to do it. He doesn't have the time to mess with this. Adam basically said, "Hold my beer." And 5 minutes later, I got a text back from Adam. "Yeah, he's in. When's he going to start?" Well, that is amazing because at that time, now I've known Chris for quite some time, and we've been friends for quite some time. But at the time, Chris still had a little bit more of a celebrity to him. So to have this guy who I'd been watching on YouTube all these years, who I was, following in the footsteps of, like, now this guy's going to be on the same show with me. Like, this is amazing. Like I just met Hulk Hogan sort of thing. Of course, Chris is never going to listen to this, so I don't have to worry about his ego blowing up. But initially, that's what it was like. I was like, this is fantastic. So he joined the show, and it's been a wild, crazy pineapple cutting time ever since.
I love it. We'll get into more of that. So, right now, what is your role at the company you're at?
Right now, I'm the official title, I guess, would be senior lead technician. Now, normally I would have apprentices like working under me, and I'd be training a little bit, but due to our business structure and lack of apprentices, I don't have anybody to train right now. So my videos have kind of been a little bit more sporadic than I would like, but still doing the same thing. I still do restaurant work every day, hot side, cold side, the HVAC stuff. I'm in restaurants every single day, keeping the restaurant industry going, doing my little part to keep them going as best I can.
Yeah, and that's awesome. You're putting the work in. How is that strain on you not having apprentices or on your company as well? Because I'm sure that if you don't have any apprentices, you guys got to do everything.
Oh yeah.
How's that? And what are you trying to do in your organization trying to do to get more people? Is there a strategy or anything?
Right now, honestly, I don't believe there's a strategy in place. It's that busy sort of the summer part of the summer where we're just putting out fires right now. There's talks about like what are we going to do because it's not getting any easier. We're still doing PMs, we're still doing catching up with other jobs, we're still following up on things that we maybe have started before, things that are screwed up. Everybody has callbacks sort of thing. Right now, there's a few things like sign-on bonuses, free training tool card, but nothing that really paid off, nothing that's really gotten apprentices through the door sort of thing.
Do you think that's a big strain in lots of locations? I know you're connected with a lot of people. Do you think that's a big strain around the country?
Yeah, actually, a couple days ago, I was on the phone with a buddy of mine who works for local 636 up in Farmington Hills, Michigan, and they work for a very very large company up there, MCOR, as a matter of fact, and I think it's company wide, but that specific part of the company, this specific part of the state of Michigan, is they're just getting hammered, and they can't get apprentices in to save their lives. They're actually having a hard time keeping the training classes open because they have such low attendance right now. I don't really understand why. I know there's generalizations we can make, there's ideas and theories why more people aren't getting to the trades, but they can't seem to lure anybody in to the trade at all.
It'd be good to kind of hear what actually they're doing to try to get people in, because I work with a lot of different organizations who are putting a lot of effort going to schools, going to high schools, going to grade schools. There's one association, Kick At Career, I'm a part of, and actually people are going to the high schools to talk about the trades all the time. I think that's one of the big things. We need to get more to the public. We need to get to the parents. And even I know I talked with Brian Orr one time, and he was telling me that he was at a big event with like 200 people in the industry, and they asked him a question like, how come we're skill shortage, or how come there's not, what was it again? How come there's not more people getting into industry?" And he posed the question back to them: how many of you are actively promoting to your kids or people around you about the HVAC and refrigeration industry? And he said like a couple of people put their hand up or whatnot, maybe 5% or something. I think both internally and externally, we got to do lot more work, make the industry sexy again.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. And see, that's where I think shows like the HVAC Overtime show and even my own personal YouTube channel, where sometimes we come across as brash and off color, and we understand we're not your typical clean cut sort of gaggle of gentlemen, but we're trying to make everybody understand like, hey, this is still fun. You can still love this industry. You can still like I got a desk full of books right now. I'm trying to be a super nerd. And at the same time, I'm having fun doing it. And also I look cool doing it. And I get to go and I have all these YouTube shows. Like we're trying to let everybody know, hey, it's fun, it's sexy, it pays great. I mean, it's fulfilling, it's satisfying. Like to go out and know that today I fixed air conditioning for a restaurant. And when I walked in, it was a local restaurant, an Arby's restaurant. And when I walked out of that restaurant, the staff were cheering me because they have been suffering for a couple days now in this muggy heat. Days like that where you just get to walk out feeling like a hero. Like that's what I want the this next generation to understand. Like these are the things you're gonna get. It's great. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have it any other way.
And that's one of the big things too, is like people don't understand refrigeration. That's the thing. Like the planet wouldn't be the way it is. We wouldn't be able to sit in the middle of winter and have blueberries and strawberries and all these fruits and all these things that we eat from different countries that 50 years ago we didn't even have it as good as we do now with the transport, with the vehicles, and then saving lives. We save so many lives. Like you going and fixing an air conditioner may save someone's life because there's so many people that die of heat stroke when we get heat waves happening and sick and ill, as well as blood banks. All these different things that we do, people don't understand. Having our cell phones, for an example, we wouldn't have these if we didn't have some sort of cooling on all those different servers and those towers. It all revolves around refrigeration and HVAC. So
100%.
we do need to figure out how to promote it properly. What is some of your favorite things you like doing in your day to day? Like, is it air conditioning working on? Is it an ice machine? Is it hot stuff? Is it there some equipment you like working on more than others?
My favorite go-to piece of equipment would be a rooftop unit. My favorite flavor is probably Carrier, maybe a Lennox, only because I'm just more familiar with those two brands. For me, it's a rooftop unit because you literally have this giant box just sitting there. And within this box, there's a problem. It's a puzzle, just like, just like a Rubik's Cube. I am there to solve this puzzle. And I have all my tools, I have my experience, I have my phone with me, my manuals, everything I need. And I get to solve this. Like I get to do it. So that's my favorite thing to do. And it shows in my videos. I do film some other stuff too, but I'm definitely more energetic when it comes to rooftop units.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the great thing is it's different all the time. People say, "Oh, well, it's a rooftop, it only has these components." But if you don't check every single if you don't have a checklist, like in all my trainings, I'm like, you got to have your own checklist. The first thing is go talk to the manager, go talk to the staff, ask them how it's been for the last couple of weeks. Find out from them, then go down and around and listen to things, and then look at things, and then feel things. You don't even need your tools to start out. Your investigation starts right when you roll up and you get out of your van or your truck.
Yeah, what do they call that? Like the HVAC technician's sixth sense or his intuition, if you will.
And I really believe that you take a systematic approach when you're going to troubleshoot, it's going to make a world of difference. Because I spent years just shooting by the hip, just going out and just randomly checking stuff and figuring out sometimes, sometimes not. But after I started, okay, let's start here. And then, okay, I checked all that stuff. Okay, it's not that. Okay, go down the line and and like a checklist. And then you don't miss anything. I missed so many things early in my days in my career because I didn't have an approach.
Yeah, I know early on I would jump in and be like, well, let's check this thing over here. It's a pressure switch. I'm checking this. Then I go, let's check the thermostat. I'm literally flying by the seat of my pants, just randomly checking things. Because at the time I didn't understand sequence of operation. I didn't internalize it as well as I have now. And it was a lot of time was wasted. I'm not going to lie. Mistakes were made, but I tried to justify that. But I learned from at least every other mistake that I've ever made. I hope to say.
And I know all, but like I tell all my students that come, like you're gonna make mistakes, but you gotta learn from those mistakes. I smash lots of compressors. Well, enough. One is too many for me, but I know there's many more after I really learned about compressors. I'm like, "Ah, those poor customers. Even though I fixed lots, they probably didn't last the 15 years that they should have."
And you think back and like, man, I only knew then what I know now. All those dryers I didn't change, or the dryers I blew through them before I put them on just to make sure they were clear.
Exactly.
Rookie mistakes.
Yeah, rookie mistakes, but that's how you learn. And one great thing about now is that anybody who's curious like yourself can start building their knowledge set. There's a lot of people that want to help, just like your crew, people around you. There's lots of people on social media who want to help. There's lots of people who don't want to help either. They can be a problem, but if you continue to search, continue to try to be curious, look for the why, you'll find it because there's so many people out there that want to help because they know that there's less and less people out there to be able to help.
There's so much free material out there. I would venture to say you could probably absorb all the material on YouTube, all the podcasts you can find on this subject, and you could probably walk away knowing quite a bit of stuff. I would venture to say you could even build a curriculum around a lot of this YouTube content and podcasts, and mix in a little bit of technical manuals and whatnot. And you got yourself your own school. I mean, you're going to have to put in some work. You're going to have to organize it yourself. You're going to have the dedication. You're going to have to schedule the time to sit down and listen to these podcasts, which, again, you're driving, you don't need to listen to the radio. Taylor Swift's going to make another song eventually about breaking up with a boyfriend. Turn it off, put on a podcast, learn something, stop wasting your time. And I would venture to say that's what really helped me initially was, like I said, read manuals on rooftops, watching YouTube videos. So anybody that's listening out there, and maybe you're overwhelmed because you heard a podcast and you caught it right in the middle and you heard somebody talking about this very complicated system, or you tuned into a YouTube video and seen somebody tearing down a rack system and you were just intimidated. It doesn't start out that way. You have to sort of get up to that level of knowledge. Start out with something a little bit easier, or maybe just dive into it, whatever you want to do. But push yourself, get into it, start absorbing it. Like, I can't say it enough. There's just so much free material out there. If you want to get into this trade and you ever complain that you can't get the knowledge, you can't find the resources, I'm going to have to call BS. I know you have a podcast out there. You have a YouTube channel out there. You offer classes, and there's a multitude of other platforms, YouTube, other podcasts. Watch some of my videos. Chris Stevens, HVACR videos. Shout out to him. He's got some great content.
So when did the personal development really, because it sounds like even from a young age you were into educating yourself, growing, getting better. When do you feel like it was that shift in personal development? Do you remember when that really happened, or when you clued in that like I really want to better myself and grow?
I remember when it sort of kicked into full gear. I kicked into full throttle, if you will, was probably when my daughter was about 5 years old. And I became a father sort of later in life, like in my mid 30s. We had my daughter. And again, there was no manual on this stuff. I was like, well, we got a kid now. We just got to figure out what to do with it. And 5 years into it, I had reached a point where I was drinking a lot, probably up until she was 2 or 3. I was drinking a lot, and I quit that cold turkey. Just one day I decided this is too much of a crutch. So I quit that. And through that, it sort of opened my eyes. And through that, I realized there were some other things I was lacking as a father, in my opinion. Other people maybe say I was crushing it, but there was some things that I wanted my daughter to walk away with at the end of my lifetime, at the end of my time spent with her. And, she would walk away and say, my dad was the greatest dad ever, and here's why. And she would have all these fantastic memories. And up until that point, I'm like, if I died tomorrow, what sort of memories would she have of me? And it'd be, well, he was angry a lot. He was working a lot. He was drunk sometimes. Nothing that I was proud of. She would also say, like, he provided for the family very well, things like that. But I knew that I wanted to be a better example for her. And then I started messing around with the idea of like, how do you get better at life? How do you just become a better person? I messed around with some therapy, like BetterHelp. I went through that route for a while just to try to get my thoughts out, get my thoughts focused. But that really wasn't getting me where I wanted to be. I wanted more, rather than just talk about why I felt sad on the inside sometimes. I wanted that gusto of life, if you will, that energy that some of these people like yourself, you have this energy. And I wanted some of that. So I got hooked up with a couple different personal life coaches, if you will. And I eventually found one that fit my personality. Our goals aligned, and I've been working with him for going on 3 years now, maybe 4. I know, probably about three and a half. And once I sort of realized that there's this whole other level of thinking, I was just hooked. I'm like, there's this whole other level of thinking where, not to demean anybody else, but there's a lot of people that are at this main level where they're just kind of floating through life, the lazy river of life. They're like, I'm just doing my thing. And if that makes you happy, that's fine. But for me, I always knew like there's something more to this, and it would give me anxiety thinking about this, that I had so much more potential, and I was just leaving that unfulfilled. Like I said, once I got hooked up with this life coach, we started diving into the various reasons behind the way I was thinking. We started reframing how I view the world. And along with that, not only reframing how I viewed the world, reframing my goals, reframing how I viewed myself as a father and how I wanted to be as a father. And I would say, like, one of the, after 3 years of working with my life coach, one of the key takeaways that I'm just like fully internalizing is, if you can imagine where you want to be 5, 10 years from now, the person you want to be, the goals you want to achieve in 5 or 10 years from now, if you have the imagination, the power of imagination to think about that and visualize that, you can get to that. And I know that sounds so vague, because everybody's saying, well, how can you do that? How can you guarantee this? How? But the first step is being able to just visualize that. And it took me so long to just understand that. And after 3 years of working with my life coach, like I said, I'm finally to a point where I can just start to see through the mystic fog of where I want to be in 5 years, the person I want to be in 5 years. Once I can internalize that picture, then every day I go through my day and I think, like, what's my outcome of this particular situation? And that person that I'm visualizing, that goal I see in the future, am I doing something every day to get to that point? That person that's going to be there, what would he be doing right now if he went back in time? If I had the chance to live my life a second time, knowing where I want to be, would I be doing what I'm doing right now? Would I be talking to Trevor Matthews on the Refrigeration Mentor podcast? Yes, I would.
I love that. I got the chills just listen to that, because this is the stuff that's key. All of you listening out there, you need to start looking for a coach. It's hands down. I used to think, coach, that's stupid. Why would I pay someone to help straighten me out? I'm straight. I know what I'm doing, but everything's falling apart around me. And you gotta choke it back. And maybe the first one doesn't work. Maybe you gotta have a few different ones, but I promise you, if you get a coach, it is going to help change your life. It just hands down. And in our industry, that's one of the things that in our industry, we're tough, we're strong, all this stuff. Take a chance. Take a chance. You make enough money, you make way more enough money to pay for a couple of them. Just invest in yourself. So how did you get into a life coach? Like, how did that happen? Like, did you said that one day, like you woke up and you said, like, I need a change. Is that when you start looking for a life coach? And like, how did you get your first one? Because there's people out there probably thinking right now, well, how do I even do this?
That's a good question. There also is a little bit of caution that you want to have when you go into these life coaches, because there's no licensing, there's no testing, there's no certification process. I can be a life coach tomorrow. I started an LLC for $25. Boom, I'm a life coach tomorrow. You give me $5,000. And I honestly am not your guy. So whenever you're searching for a life coach, do your homework. Find maybe past clients. Find anything you can on them. Do your homework. But I started the process by a couple of the Facebook groups that I was a part of, like Fit Dads was one of them. There's another group. I think it's hosted by the Mind Pump Media guys. And I would go into these groups and just kind of ask about it. Started off with, I need a fitness coach and somebody who can help me out with my diet and exercise programs. And then that slowly evolved into, like, well, these guys would introduce themselves like, well, I basically do all that stuff. We can talk fitness, and we also will address the mental side of your game, your motivation, your reasoning why you want to do things. And then that sort of got me thinking, like, well, if there's these guys that can help me out with not only getting my physicality in check, my nutrition in check, and they also can help me get the mental side of my life back in balance, well, that's the way to go. And then I talked to a couple guys, just didn't really get the vibes from them that it was going to be good. They were sort of very bro-ish, if that makes any sense. Just not my cup of tea. But then I had this one coach who's my coach right now, where we had a conversation. I loved his energy, just very energetic. But yeah, all that just to say, I would look in some of these Facebook groups, some of these groups where they're all about personal growth and fitness. If you can find anybody who's went to the I forget the name of the actual program, but Tony Robbins. I'm sure everybody's heard the name Tony Robbins. He has a couple of various programs that he does to train personal coaches, personal life coaches. And actually, the coach I have, he came from that. And when I was doing my research on him, that was one of the things that came across. Is like, well, I've read some Tony Robbins books. I like his material. And this guy has already basically gone through the Tony Robbins school of hard knocks. So let's give him a shot. But yeah, it starts with just asking around, join up some of these fitness groups. These fitness groups full of all sort of motivated people that want to help you, want to see you do good, or they know somebody who has the time to help you. They know somebody. It's just 80% of the people I interact with on these are just good people, and then you just have to watch out for the 20% of snake oil salesmen.
I really like what you said there is that you need to do your research. And it's like anything. If you're getting a quote for someone to come and fix your pool, I know you'd fix it. You don't just take anybody off the street or fix your air conditioner. You should be looking for someone that fits, who's going to do the right thing for you. And 100%, you have to do your research. Ask them. I want 5 references. I had someone yesterday call me up and said, "Listen, I heard you on this podcast. I can really help your business. And I know exactly the things you need." So we talked a little bit. Okay, send me 5 references because I want to. This is what I said. I want 5 references that I can call, verify you, and talk about your work. I haven't heard anything back from them. And it's fine. But I'm learning from being burnt before by just jumping in because I'm like an all or nothing kind of person a lot of the time, right? Like I just dive right in. But you got to do your research. But I'll tell you, and I'm sure Bill will tell you, if you get a coach in the right coach, and you're going to get to your next level very quickly, faster than you would really think. Like, and you'll look back after a year. I bet you're looking back after 3 years, like, man, the growth. This is crazy. I'm a different person now.
100%, 100%. And it's for all those who are sort of squeamish about the idea, it is an investment. It's an investment in yourself. I like to tell people this trade, life in general, but this trade specifically will beat your body down. And along with that, it'll take your mind with it if you let it. And if you want to be in this for the long run, you need to get your physicality right. You need to get some nutrition in you. You go to the gym a little bit. And along with that, you need to get your mental game in check. And if you want to be the top end of producers in the industry, you're going to need some mental blockades, some growth in yourself, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. That's what I'm all about is hitting the gym, getting a personal growth, listening to personal development, motivational podcasts. Like some of them I listen to and it motivates me, it pumps me up, and then I can go to the gym and do my workout. What are some of the, because I know you said Tony Robbins a bunch of times, and I'm reading actually Awaken the Giant right now.
Oh, just got that on Audible. I read that years ago, I think, or was it Unshakable is the one that I just read. And then also he's got some money management books as well. But yeah, anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, no, that's good. So what are some of the, so you say Tony Robbins, what are some of the other people that you found really helped you in your personal development?
As far as like written authors, there's John C. Maxwell so far. John C. Maxwell, he's got a bunch of various books on leadership strategies. And some of them you could say are just same message, rebranded, reworked a little bit. But you can literally just close your eyes and point to a pile of his books, pick it up, read it, and you're going to get a lot out of it. So John C. Maxwell has been a good influence for me. I just got his new book. It's not really new, but it's new to me. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, the 25th anniversary. Another guy who he's been in the leadership sort of space for quite a while, Jocko Willink. He's got a podcast. I don't really follow the podcast too much, but he's got a couple books that I like, Leadership Strategies and Tactics. He's a former military guy turned professional speaker and motivational coach. And then of course the Tony Robbins that I said there. The newest book that I wanted to point out to everybody that I'm reading right now was recommended by my buddy Adam Muffich. It's Be Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Now this guy, I've never heard any of his other works before. I don't know him other than the one reference that I have from my buddy Adam. And this book, just to give you a quick 10,000-foot view, is kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Have some imagination and visualize these goals. Visualize the person you want to be or where you want to be in life. The goal, you want to have a certain amount of money in the bank. First, you have to have the imagination to actually see yourself holding that money in your hand. And This is sort of that book, but it goes into, it goes through mental exercises. There's a lot more depth to it. I'm just giving you a quick summary of it. Besides those sort of published authors in the immediate HVAC space, I mean, I find motivation all around me. You yourself, you've been a very motivating character for quite some time. Let's see, Brian Orr, he was probably one of the first people who I looked at. I'm like, wow, this guy is just crushing it. Then I got my buddies. I don't want them to get big egos, but Chris Stevens, Adam Muffich. I don't know if anybody out there has been paying attention to Adam Muffich, but this is a guy you want to watch out for. He's crushing it in life. He's going places, and I hope to be right there on his coattails.
Yeah, and so this is stuff that's important. Like all the people that Bill talked about, like them or hate them, they're putting out content that will really help you because they're trying to help you grow. Lots of people are like, oh, it's a scam. Tony Robbins is a scam. Maybe you don't like him. Find somebody else that you resonate with. Like one of the guys that I follow is Bob Proctor. He talks about vibrations. He talks about all this mind stuff that 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I've been like, this guy is out of his mind. Just wasn't in my realm. And now, like, vibration, just like you said there, visualizing what you want is so key. If you want to get a pay raise, if you want to get a better job, you want to become a service manager, you want to become a business owner, the first thing is you need to think about it and think about it all the time. Because if you don't, you're like what Bill said earlier, you're just drifting, just that mediocre, not getting anywhere, everything's okay. You want to get after those ideas and just think about it all the time. The biggest problem that I see a lot of the times is that you're thinking about something negative all the time. So that stuff's going to keep happening. You're thinking about bad stuff's going to keep happening because that's all you think about. And then you're going to be, you think yourself into that. So I really like that visualization, those ideas, you got to focus on those.
And I think a lot of people, if they do get to the step where they can visualize, or they even are able to put it into words where they want to be later in life, then they start getting hung up on the whys and the hows, and we'll never get there because of this, this, and this. I got to pay this house off, and I can't do this because of this. And they start getting into the can't attitude, and they get overwhelmed with this. And I know it sounds sort of anti what you're used to, I guess, for lack of better words. If you can just visualize it and just stop thinking about how you're going to get there, if you just keep focusing on it, the universe will make it happen. That's just the way I look at it. It's like the rug ties the room together.
And it does. Like growth will continue as long as you're working towards those different goals, those ideas, those visions. You'll continue to grow. The big thing is that I've noticed, and even in the past for me, is like instant gratification. I need this now, now, now. But anytime that I plan something, I made it happen. Anytime I wanted something now, 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 didn't happen. Is that planning, that process, that grind to get what you want.
Also, another thing I think that people don't necessarily or aren't necessarily aware of in their life is, I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but you're a sum of the five people that you spend the most time with. And that also goes with not only the people that you let saturate your life, but the content that you're absorbing. Like if you're going home and you're just watching YouTube videos of, a guy ate 10 pounds of M&Ms, or the guy filled a pool with Orbeez and swam in it, you're not going to get much out of it. So if you surround yourself with stupid content, you're just going to be stupid. You surround yourself with stupid, negative, angry people, you're going to eventually turn into a stupid, negative, angry person. You surround yourself with like-minded people who are reaching for goals. The Trevor here, myself, Adam Muffich, these guys are all the guys that I like to just have in my immediate space.
Yeah, and that's so true. It might be friends, it might be family, it might be coworkers, and you say, "Well, I can't get away from them." Well, reduce the amount of time. Don't call them the 5 times a day while you're driving from service call to service call. Put on a podcast. Listen to the podcast and just reduce the amount of time, and you'll see your life change. I've had to do that with certain relationships in my life, and it's tough, but those things will hold you back.
100%.
I love this conversation. We talked a bit about your journey. We talked about how you got that great name, Curious HVAC guy. I love that. Talked about the crew that you're on, some personal development. What's next for Bill?
Well, that is a good question. I'm actually I'm sort of just completely revamping my vision board, right? Because recently I've had some sort of things change around and I've had some goals kind of shift. And I'm like, you know what? I thought I wanted this, but now that's kind of a little bit of a course adjustment. So for me, I've sort of had this renewed energy towards training and or maybe getting into a little bit of writing. I still have this passion of wanting to make an impact on the industry in some way, shape, or form. And I'm working on getting a clear picture of what that is. And by no means am I saying that we can somehow all predict the future, but I need to sort of get a better understanding of that. But I've been experimenting with writing some articles for a couple various things, and I got a kick out of that, writing a little bit of material that I feel I'm versed enough to express on paper. Of course, the videos, I will always be doing videos. And beyond, I feel like I want to move into probably a training position of some sort at a just a regular old mechanical contracting company and just sort of stay out of the limelight, but also maybe write articles for some big gangs of people, some big corporations.
Love it. You're gonna do it. You already have it set. You have it set, and you're gonna focus on it, and you're gonna make it there.
It's getting there.
I love that. Any final words for technicians out there? Things that they should look for, things that they should try. I know you gave a lot of tips already to really just improve either their career or their personal life.
That's a deep question. I'm going to sum it up with sort of a no pun intended, but for me, honestly, it's always been just to stay curious. And that's again, like I know it sounds cheesy for me to say that because that's my moniker, if you will, but it has always been like I've always tried to maintain a level of curiosity about my life, about how I get better. Anybody out there, just exercise a little bit of curiosity. Like, why don't you know something? Where can you learn that thing? What don't you know yet? Because you don't know something you don't know. I mean, that goes without saying. So I would say stay curious. And if you're not curious already, well, get curious.
I love that. Bill, I want to thank you for taking the time to hang out with me in the Refrigeration Mentor podcast and sharing your story and sharing the things that you do to grow yourself. And I really believe more people need to do this. Not only technicians, but people in life in general need to take the time to invest in themselves, grow a little bit, and you can become unstoppable when you start to invest in yourself. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, my pleasure.
I definitely will see you back on the Refrigeration Mentor podcast. Everyone, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Bill did an amazing job sharing his stories. Please share this on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. This is how other people find out about other cool people in the industry who care, who want to help train and educate others. I want to thank you again, and we'll see you at the next Refrigeration Mentor podcast.
Hey, thank you for watching this video. I do hope it is bringing you a lot of value. If you are looking to grow and build your refrigeration teams and want them to learn CO2 refrigeration, head to the refrigerationmentor.com website, click to contact us, and let us know how we can build a culture around training inside your organization. Let's get a conversation going.